In just a matter of days, I leave to a place located in New York, known as Freedom Village. This documentary explains why I'm in this position right now. Since the start of middle school, my life was the epitome of abandoning, heartbreakage, bullying, and abandonment. I felt like the stem of a dandelion, watching my petals turn into fluff and just drift off into the horizon, like collecting in your favorite video game just for it to wipe out your progress in the end. Like treating an ill animal you've been very close with, only for it to recover and move on with its life. I'm a guy who really tries to stick out from the rest, considering how many teens my age are full-time hipsters. They all dress the same way with styles that are really glaring to the eyes. The slang with added vocabulary every 5 seconds, and the innocent-looking guys and girls who just don't act themselves, which can cater to the hipster point. I'm writing about this now, but admittedly, I was one of them at some point, not even long ago. It lasted throughout the second half of grade 7, and ended nearly before semester 1 of grade 9, pulling out the slang, blending in with the so-called swagger of theirs, and trying to get more ladies than others, as if it were the cool thing to do. I did this because kids my age really weren't into who I was. I loved to draw anime-styled art, loved to write, enjoyed giving advice, and, psychology for that matter, and was very into video games and the Japanese culture as a whole. The fact is that I was very different from the bunch. They all listened to horrible mainstream pop and rap artists who care less about being innovative and inspiring, but instead more cliched and idiotic. The brand you own, whether it's clothing or a smartphone, doesn't mean a thing if it isn't made by top developers like Apple and BlackBerry. Not being a part of this hipsterism causes most of them to be quite biased and ignorant toward you. Ever thought you'd be low-tiered because the music you had wasn't by a certain artist, or because your phone wasn't a BlackBerry or any trendy phone of that matter? I sure wasn't expecting it. I thought it was normal. So, I went along with it all back then. Frankly, I was becoming more and more popular because of it. Many would be jealous of how many girls I'd attract and flirt with. The popular boys looked up to me, I think, and enjoyed hanging around me. Heck, I even managed to hang around a lot and go partying at nighttime just to dance with some ladies. At a young age like mine, this was something to be thankful for. Though, something felt off about it. Oh, that's right. I wasn't myself at the time. You may have seen me as one of those swagster guys outdoors, but when I'm home, I'm a whole new person. Near the end of grade 8, I wanted to express the real me. What triggered it was both my intuition and the fact that one of my crushes, who knew I liked her, was aware of how fake I was being. After such a phenomenon, I pledged to express the real me and boost my intellect. I spent time on the internet, also known as Nerd Heaven, to help with my grammar and writing, also searching up nearly every new word I heard during commentaries or discussions on a certain forum page. Having a stronger vocabulary really helped me defend myself from critics at school. But unfortunately, I had to give up on most friends I had. Some left or treated me poorly because I was under their league, quote unquote, to them. It was a huge change of pace for me, as I've never been treated this way since grade 6. Back then, I was treated like garbage because once again, I was different, wasn't a part of the swagster team, and was always targeted for hanging around this one girl. It was insane. Her boyfriend, that I never knew about, would pick on me and had grade 8 boys to beat me up whenever he desired. So yes, I was targeted to death and frankly scared to go back to school every single day. I never had friends that year unless you count the ones who were just trying to be nice. And nobody really liked hanging around me. I was what they called the loner. Throughout the year, I attempted suicide and ran away from home. What saved me during the end of the year, however, was a person I met who is now considered my best friend. But I'll get into that later. All of this is the reason why I became a swagget in grade 7 in the first place. As I wanted to change near the end of grade 8, I couldn't wait until it was over. The more I heard about the likes of high school, the more I wanted to go. I thought my troubles would just wash away as high school had older and more mature students. Sadly, I was wrong. Things stayed the same until second semester, as I finally began to express who I really was. The thought of high school having a more mature audience is what encouraged me to finally do so. Though not much has benefited from me. I was treated like a low tier again, and girls would subliminally tell me why I was being friend-zoned. This time, I was sure to stay this way and show people who the real me was, so that I attract the right company instead of thugs. But all it's been doing was scaring people away. I thought I was never going to see the light of day. A few weeks later, however, I met this girl in my English class that me and one of my close friends got to know. Me and him would look at her and drool from her beauty. Not only that, but as we got to know her, we realized she was no ordinary girl. Her personality and looks screamed perfection, in my opinion. At first, all three of us were just regular friends as we both tried amusing her and doing all sorts of fun things together. Then I began to like her. I mean, this girl had everything I've been asking for. Now the only problem was, my friend began to like her as well, and I wasn't in for a competition. We both knew that we liked her, but he insisted that he'd back off and let me go for her. So, that's what I did. I did everything I could to win her heart. I hung out with her, I amused her in class, I even gave her a Christmas gift. She knew I liked her, but decided not to break the news. Instead, she did what many other girls did to me in the past. Use subliminal messages. I began to notice how much she seemed to enjoy my friend's company compared to me. She hugged him more, talked a little more, and they even added each other on Facebook, which not even I had at the time. She did this all in front of me, while I was giving her my full potential. I decided to give up the moment people recommended them to be together, thinking that this abysmal cycle would never end. I ended up helping them get together instead, as that was the only thing I could accomplish, and right I was. In just a few days, they were together. When he told me the news, I was happy for them, but at the same time, I was torn apart, knowing that someone who wasn't even trying compared to me managed to get her. She even stated that she wasn't into swagsters who low-ride their pants and use slang. I was the complete opposite of that. He wasn't. But yeah, that was it for me. All I could do as a friend was support them and face the fact that I was never going to see the light of day until adulthood. It didn't go so well as I thought it would. I could barely last a minute with them, as we hung out because of jealousy. I couldn't focus in class, and sometimes I'd even walk out in anger. Not just out in the hallways, but I'd even walk out of the school. A couple days later, they broke up. Right after that, he began to change, so I never had the chance to feel relieved as things continued to happen. He hung out with older swaggots, smoked weed, and treated girls like toys ever since. I wasn't a fan of it, but before I could bail out on it, he did the favor. He did it because he wasn't a fan of my intellect building anymore. After all I've done for him over the years, he bails out anyway. Frankly, this happened with everyone I tried helping. I succeed, but one day they decide to give up and do the wrong things. So with that, I thought that was it. I always felt alone, anxious, and depressed at that point, because it seemed like not even high school was benefiting my life compared to previous years. Though I was more focused in class now that friends weren't one of the priorities anymore, I began cutting. Now, on my first go, it wasn't just one or two slits, mind you. I grabbed the utensil I had and wet at it on my arm. There were cuts all over it. During this time, I started talking to the girl again after a long absence. I wasn't expecting much because my heart was still feeling rather hollow. Though later down the road, we got to know each other more. We gave each other our phone numbers and added each other on Facebook to continue our conversations. We then got closer and closer, to the point where I thought a relationship was near. What also made me think that was how much she cared for me. I noticed that after she recognized my cuts and suicide attempts. I even told her about my backstory, including the dating incident. She would cry for me, do whatever it takes to be there for me, and she'd love me. So I began to give her the same amount of care. At this point, I was happy, thinking that I have the love of my life here in my arms. Though there were a few problems. She loved being around guys and had trouble speaking up with me. That in turn can leave a lot of pieces out of the puzzle and can cause a person to make assumptions. Plus, she seemed to hang out with other guys more and enjoy their existence more than mine. It made me feel jealous. I let such things affect me, so instead of talking to her about it, I began making assumptions in my mind. Then I was feeling even more anxious. I just couldn't stop thinking about the negative things she could have been doing behind my back. With so much stress upon me, I began cutting and feeling depressed again, until one day I couldn't handle it anymore. After months of useless appointments with doctors and psychologists, I thought a program with constant assistance would help. They recommended Freedom Village, and so that's what I chose to do after a while of thinking about it. Now before I end this off, I want to say that this girl is not the full cause of my problems. In fact, let me go out of my way to say that her name is Bree Whiffen, what I refer to as Faith. She's a very special girl who went through a hell of a lot in her life. During our last few days of being together, I talked to her about all of this. I told her about the mistakes she'd made that hurt me and how much I really loved her. I also wrote her letters that consist of this, and some comedy. It made her feel loved, and so I continued to write more and more every now and then. Now I'm going to be honest here. Recently she did things that really hurt me and crushed my heart, and so I asked her if being friends is really what she wanted or not. She said yes, and insisted on starting over when I get back. I forgave her for what she did, but was still disappointed with what she'd done, and I had such a hard time trusting her again. But she admitted her faults and promised to learn from her mistakes for when I get back. In fact, throughout July, she's been writing down all the advice I gave her for reference. And she wrote beautiful poems for me. She's truly one of a kind, and I'm glad she's a part of my life. Bree, if you're watching this, I hope you meant everything you said in that post. You truly are my princess, a very beautiful and delicate one that I dedicate my life to. But I also hope that you really do love me like you said you did, and are willing to wait for my arrival, as I'll be an improved person for you. I'm choosing to forgive and forget for next year, and if you live up to those promises, I'll be back to be your man, and to say that I love you again. Goodbye. Now before I really end this off, I have to thank my close friends and family for supporting me. The first one I referred to in this documentary is named Shavar. He was one of the closest friends I had, and still is. Without him, I wouldn't have such childhood memories to reminisce about. Though, I won't talk about that or any of the others, as it would stretch the video out more than it is. But again, thank you all. Thank you all for listening to what I had to say. I'm sorry if this may not make as much sense or is scattered all over the place or whatever, but I'm glad I got enough of it out there before I leave. I hope Freedom Village helps me so that I can proceed in life happily and make my true love happy as well. Again, thank you all. I hope you all have a great night.